Thank you for being here. My name is Sarah Goodwin-Thiel. I'm the coordinator of the Heracombe Gallery Exhibits and Events Program. Today is the first of two gallery lecture series events that will be held this spring, and the gallery lecture series events are held in conjunction with the Heracombe Gallery that you'll see right next to us. This semester we have an exhibition called Rightfully Yours. And this is scholarship from faculty, students, and community partners having to do with voting rights and the different amendments and acts that address voting rights. This morning, we're pleased to welcome as our first speaker for the Gallery Lecture Series, KU's student body president, Tiara Floyd. She'll be speaking to us about her work with the 2020 U.S. Census. Tiara is a senior at KU studying African and African American studies with minors in political science and German. She's very active in the Black Student Union, the Zeta Phi Beta sorority, and a variety of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts here on campus. In 2019, Tiara was one of just 28 Kansans appointed by Governor Laura Kelly to the General Kansas Complete Count Committee, the committee charged to coordinate efforts to promote and advertise the 2020 census. Governor Kelly describes the members of this committee as, quote, highly passionate professionals willing to step up to the challenge. I think it's clear why Tiara was chosen to join this committee, and it's our privilege today to have her here with us. Please help me welcome Tiara Floyd.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So like Sarah said, I'm a senior in African American Studies. I was appointed to the Kansas Complete Count Committee in 2019 by Governor Kelly. And ever since then, I've been working to make sure that people and students at KU are counted. And so my presentation was to be about the census at KU and my efforts. And the motto, I guess you could say, for the census in 2020 is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. So this is just some basic information about the 2020 census. So it is mandated in the Constitution. Of course, it's conducted every 10 years. It counts every resident where you sleep 51% of the time, so most of the time you live and sleep. And it's also confidential. Responses are protected by federal law for 72 years. And actually all census workers are required by law, and they actually have a lot of penalties. I think it's up to 25 years in prison or a $500,000 fine for every response or person they reveal information to. So if they reveal 4 people's information, then they're facing up to 100 years in prison. So it's a pretty rigorous system, and so it helps with just keeping things confidential. So the census is mainly used for redistricting and figuring out where the 435 representatives come from in each state. It also determines how $675 billion are allocated in federal funding, and this goes to different things like highways and infrastructure, financial aid, social programs like Medicaid, and things like that. It can also help local businesses and governments figure out, one, who's here, how the population is growing or decreasing, and how they can spend their money wisely and where money needs to go. So Census Day is April 1st in 2020, and there's 3 options, and this is actually new. You can either complete it online, which will probably help a lot of college students out, by phone or by mail, of course. So with student involvement, like Sarah said, I was appointed by Governor Kelly in 2019, and the Kansas Complete Count Committee is a statewide effort to get everyone counted. I believe there have been at least monthly meetings where we either meet in Wichita or Topeka. Last month it was in Lawrence, in order to make sure everyone is getting counted. And I'm on a board, or the committee is full of people ranging from the League of Municipalities to professors. KU's own Brian McClendon is actually one of the co-chairs of the committee, and so he's helping out with that. And one of the things I was charged with, or I guess took hold of, was creating a case-specific committee. There's tons of subcommittees and whatnot within the Kansas Complete Count Committee, And so I took it upon myself to create one here at KU to ensure that all of the students get an accurate count. And I was 11 the last time the census was conducted, so I'm actually learning a lot about what the census is, what it does, how college students are affected. And so that's what I'll get into right now. So the main problems with college students in the census is that, of course, they're unsure where to count themselves. I'm originally from Junction City, Kansas, so if I was a freshman this year, and I would probably think to count myself in Junction City, but since I live here in Lawrence most of the time, I have to count myself in Lawrence. What's super important about counting yourself is where you're at April 1st, 2020. So I'll be here April 1st, 2020, so I'll be counting in Lawrence. And so a lot of college students just don't know if you're a college student, you should be counting yourself in the city where you're going to school. Also, they don't know how many people to count. Of course, a lot of students have roommates, and one big concern is, you know, you only are allowed to have 3 people on the lease, so there's like 6 people living in your apartment. But the government really doesn't care about that lease, so you count all 6 people that are living there most of the time and on April 1st. And going to where to count themselves, they'll probably leave it to their parents to count them. My mom should not count me in Junction City because I'm not there most of the time. Of course, just no knowledge about the census. Like I said, I was 11 the last time the census happened, so it's not a lot of knowledge. You know, we don't grow up getting taught about these things in like government class. You just kind of know that it happens every 10 years, and someone comes knocking on your door. I actually remember a census worker knocking on our door 10 years ago to count, but I wasn't really sure. So now to be 21 years old and having to count myself and my roommate and things like that, it's a big learning curve, essentially. One other problem is my generation not opening mail or answering phones or wanting to talk on the phone, so that's why having an option to complete it online is really great. And we have a lot of hard to count populations. So within the census and as a whole, there are things called hard to count populations, and those tend to be more marginalized identities like people of color, age-wise with babies and infants. I think the infant age is about 0 to 4, get miscounted a lot. Undocumented people and college students. And so within college students being a hard to count population already, because of so many misconceptions and whatnot about the census, we have kind of more underlying hard to count populations with international students, which is probably an obvious one of they don't think that they should be counted because they're not from the United States, but if you're here most of the time, regardless of where you are originally from, you should be counted. Undocumented and DACA recipient students, of course, earlier this year and last year, there was the conversation about whether the citizenship question was on the census. It's not, and so my efforts will really have to focus on making sure that people understand that the citizenship question isn't on there and that the government does not know if you are undocumented or a DACA recipient at all, let alone none of this data for 2020 will be released for 72 years. And so just to put that kind of in perspective, I believe census data from about the 40s will be released soon. So it really shows how large that gap is of doing that. And then of course off-campus students. I didn't know that the government actually gets census data via on-campus students by, I forgot the name of it, but they take all of the housing documents and whatnot, and they're able to partner with the registrar's office at college campuses and see how many people are living on campus. So actually on-campus students are counted automatically. They don't have to complete the census because the universities give that information to the Census Bureau already. So another hard to count population is off-campus students because those are the ones that are going to be getting the mail, actually having to physically fill out the census. And of course, as we go back to the problems, how do people count, where they count themselves, and so on. But the benefits of college students completing the census is federal funding to KU, federal funding with financial aid, specifically the Pell Grant. It'll show how many students are able to receive the Pell Grant, how much money the government is able to give for the Pell Grant, and things like that. It puts money towards city infrastructure. So me, I drive a lot in Lawrence. I'm sure my car suspension is probably all jacked up because of how many potholes there are. Every person that's counted, that's more money to fix roads in Lawrence, as well as other social welfare programs such as SNAP, Medicaid, things that college students can benefit from. And so my efforts as student body president with the student committee, I've been meeting with them and talking about tabling events, doing things maybe like copy and census on Wesco, and encouraging students to fill it out, and of course giving them as much information as possible, with the emphasis on the hard to count population, so those international and documented off-campus students. I'm planning a competition with K-State to see who can have the highest response rate. So hopefully it's us, and I'll get more people geared up to do it. And then plus, I made sure that my committee kind of had an interdisciplinary focus where it's not usually the usual political science or government focused students, but we have business students, and we have AAAS, we have global and international students, and of course political science students as well, so that we're able to really focus on those different schools and get the message out there as much as possible. And in my own personal outreach, I've been doing talks and presentations like this one today. I had one a few weeks ago. I've been having a social media presence as well, with like tweeting, retweeting things, talking to the Kansman about this, and different newspapers about the importance of the census. And so I know I will find out really quickly. So are there any questions or anything I can consider for you all today?
On the information that, let's say, students get to fill out their census form, does it say, like, count yourself here or count yourself where you live? Does it give them some guidance on that?
Yeah, I am kind of blanking on the form right now, but it does, within the mail, you get a postcard, and then to kind of remind you that it's coming, and then you'll get the actual census, and it'll have instructions. And so it'll tell people or ask people to make sure they know how many people are living in their household, the age, birthday, race, and ethnicity of those people. So the census itself does have a little bit of a guide on how to fill it out.
Yeah, it was similar, but then also I'm thinking when I first did the census, I was in college, and someone just came to my door, and I was like, oh, okay, this is happening, and I just answered their question. So are there still people who like are going door to door?
Yeah, so as every census, it's actually leading up, I think March 1st to April 1st, there will be the initial postcards being sent out and kind of reminding people, and you'll have the form sent to you and whatnot. And April 1st is when the government would love to have everyone counted, and that's kind of the date. And then after April 1st is the follow-up period where you'll see census people going door to door asking for people to fill out the census and asking those questions. So that's still there as well. Yep.
Is there any concern of like someone fills it out online and then also does it with like in person, so maybe they get twice or something like that?
Yeah, so with that, I'm going to say no, because with the form being mailed to you, there's a specific code that your household receives. So there has been someone at KU that is working on literally canvassing and marking every single address in Lawrence. And so when you get that code sent to you, that's specific to your address and your address only. And so then you'll only fill that out once. The canvassers come only to the houses that have not filled out the census yet. So they'll know this household has, this household hasn't.
I just want to say thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
This is really important work, and I think it's amazing that you're able to do that with the students and do all these other things too. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you answered the question I was gonna ask, which is what's the contact look like? I mean, so each household will get some sort of like a postcard.
Yeah.
What if you have two houses? How do you,
Like you,
if you own two homes in two different places, how do you?
that's actually something I cannot answer. Unfortunately, I just don't know the answer to that. That actually hasn't been an issue that I've heard of yet, but I don't know.
The form will be sent to both households. You respond to the household where you are currently living. If you receive the other form, you can say you usually live in this other house. Otherwise, someone will show up at the house where you do not respond and note that it's vacant, and that it's seasonal housing.
So you need to write,
There'll be a comment in the instructions for the form that will tell you how to respond to the second
we
household.
have to decide.
I don't wanna grill you, just ask a question. So I'm curious about, I mean, you may not know this, but like, when it comes to the census, is the federal government pretty good at like projecting what they think the population will be? And then like does the census ever like show that it's really different from what projections show? Do you have any sense of?
Yeah, so what I've been shown so far is in terms of where people are projecting the representation going. So I probably should have put it on here, but I've seen projections of which states are going to lose and gain representatives. For the most, I believe Kansas is safe with the 4 that we'll have. But states like Texas, I think, is gaining 3. I believe Ohio is like losing 1. And so I've seen those projections that people are projecting certain states losing and gaining their representatives.
And then so, sorry. And I feel like I probably should have learned this in government class, maybe I did, but like, so is that formula sort of codified in the Constitution of how that stuff is determined, like this number of people equals this many representatives, is that?
Yeah, so on a very, I have not taken a government class, I don't know how long, but yeah, so the representatives are based off of the population, and that's where, and the population information is from the census. So for the next 10 years, we'll have the same number of representatives until the next census comes out. I'm not sure exactly what the formula is of like, times and adding and subtracting, but yeah, so the census creates those numbers and because it shows where the population has grown or decreased, and so states like California or Texas, if they've grown substantially in the last 10 years, they'll need more representatives versus states like Kansas, whose population is unfortunately decreasing every year in probably the next decade or so. Hopefully not, but we might lose some representatives because of that lower population.
Do you know what the student count has been in previous census?
If I am thinking of the number off the top of my head, we've had a pretty low response rate at KU. I can't give you like an exact solid number, but I do know that response rates have been about the 60s, lower 60s to mid 60 percentile, to where that means that only 60% of students are responding. And there's actually a really great thing online called ROAM, R-O-A-M, and it'll show you for the 2010 census, which states and literally down to like the city and the district in the city, the response rate. So you'll see kind of on KU's campus a very low response rate versus maybe West Lawrence has a higher one, or you can see in Wyandotte County a much lower response rate versus Johnson County. You'll see those spike very significantly in different places.
Oh, okay.
Well, when is it finalized? So you said it's April 1st that it comes out, when is it?
I believe the date is in December is when it will sit on the president's desk of this is the population of the United States. So from that April 1st date to about early summer, there'll be the follow-ups and the door knocking, and then from that point to that December date, and I apologize if I'm getting any dates wrong right now, it'll be all compiled and analyzed and things like that. And then in December, the president will know the complete counts and everything and what the population looks like. So by December, the Census Bureau wants all of that. We'll have all of that information finalized and on the president's desk.
I have a question, and this may not be something you know, but I am curious. There was an ICE agent that was masquerading as a census person that came to an apartment where my daughter lives. Not my daughter's apartment, but one of their neighbors who happened to be a Hispanic woman. Are there penalties for impersonating a census officer? Because that's what this person was doing.
Yeah. I'm not sure if there are penalties to impersonating. I'm sure there are because you're impersonating government personnel.
That's what I was.
But the Census Bureau is taking a lot of strides in making sure that a census person is able to be clearly identified. They'll have a badge, they'll have a certain phone case, they'll have a name tag. It'll be clearly marked that they are from the census.
Excellent.
Is that part of your outreach maybe to those hard to count populations, like this is what to look for? To
Yeah.
Most
Make sure
definitely,
that
because
this is a real.
because this year, also in 2020, there'll be the ACS survey. I forgot what it stands for. I think it's the American Community Survey, and that's kind of like the census, but it's much longer, and those have much more in-depth questions of like race, gender, citizenship, things like that. So it'll be definitely hard to get that message across that those are two very different things, that the census is something that's like 10 questions long, it's short, it won't ask you really in-depth about your person, but the ACS is something that is super, super in-depth. It takes a long time to complete, so it's just unfortunate those are happening at the same time right now, but it's definitely one of those harder things to outreach to students about, is definitely getting that message across, because especially in this day and age with social media and a lot of TV and whatnot, things can definitely get jumbled up very quickly.
Thank you for clarifying that. I seem to recall that in previous censuses that they had a short form and a long form, and maybe that's what I'm getting confused on, is that the ACS was a long form. But has there been a short form and a long form on the census?
As far as I've been told, the census is just a short form.
Okay.
And that ACS, which happens every 5 years, is that
Okay.
longer form. And of course, with every 10 to every 5 years, there'll be times where they meet up. So.
Okay, thank you.
Mine isn't a question, it's just a comment. My sister's done the census twice, been a census taker. The first time when she was in college, and then 20 years later. And the interesting things is, for the homeless, they would go between 1 and 3 o'clock in the morning. So they hoped, and she did say if they went to a homeless person, there were a few that would tell them they had been counted before. And then she also lived in Alaska, up above the Arctic Circle, and to count them, they had to come to the post office. I think to go out to get all those. So those are just two kind of interesting, and they did have police escort when they went.
Just a quick question about the college student count. You said that people who live in college housing are counted automatically. Is that universal, or is that, I'm the parent of 2 college students that are at different universities, not in Kansas. So is that universal, so all universities do that, or should I tell my kids to watch for census information?
As far as I know, and of course all my information and training has been really case specific or
Right.
Kansas specific, but I would believe that the U.S. Census Bureau as a whole has partnerships with these universities, because it really is simple as going to the registrar's office, grabbing the information about, 1,200 people live in the dorms across campus. So I would say yes, that all the universities have that contract with the Census Bureau, and that your students probably are okay with the
Any student living on a campus or in a college or university-owned housing will be counted through the college. The Census Bureau contacts each university or college and then asks them, how would you like us to count? Will you just hand us over the records, or will you give us access to the dorm and we'll knock door to door? So if there is a chance that someone will show up, they will not get a mailing at a dorm.
Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna comment that the ACS, which used to be the long form, only counts every 1 in 50 people. I believe that's still right. So not everybody will get both.
Right, yeah, and that's
Short
an
form.
extremely randomized survey, while the
Yeah.
census literally counts or tries to count everyone.
The regular decennial census should get everybody.
Sarah?
Well, I'm just wondering if you, as you've been working with KU students on this effort, if you can kind of take the temperature of this campus. We've got so many things happening this year with the election coming up and the census this year and challenges to both of these things. Do you get a sense, do you feel that students and faculty and staff on this campus are engaged in wanting to be involved with this, or what do you sense?
Yeah. I think that the campus, especially with, I guess, how much government involvement there is happening in 2020 with the elections and then the census, that there has been a great effort to make sure that people understand like voting rights or like the census and things like that. Of course, with being in student government, I would probably say yes, but that's my entire life. Like that's my bubble I live in right now is making sure I'm going out and presenting this information. But I know that even across the state at K-State, there's efforts to make sure that students are being registered to vote. Same here at KU, that people understand their voting rights and things like that, and the history behind voting rights and with the census. This is, I believe, my second presentation within a few weeks about college students and the census and how everyone at KU should be counted. So I would say that the university and different departments within the university are trying extremely hard to make sure that information is given to everyone, whether it's staff, faculty, students, boards, community members. So I guess like the short answer is yes. I think that there's a positive reaction, especially this early in the year, to making sure that all of this information is given correctly, soundly, and available to everyone. I would imagine, I graduate in May, but I imagine in kind of fall semester of 2020, there's a larger, effort out there to make sure that, especially with voting things are done correctly and are at a higher volume.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for answering all these great answers to all these questions. There are clearly a lot of questions about the census, and you just nailed all of them. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you guys for coming. And I just wanted to tell you our next Gallery Lecture Series event is on April 7th, and yes, April 7th at 2 o'clock, and we'll have Jacob Justice, who's a PhD candidate at the Department of Communication Studies, and he'll be discussing presidential rhetoric and the Trump campaign rallies. So that should also be interesting. So come back if you can, and there's still more food, so help yourselves, and thank you all for coming. And thank you, Sarah, so much.